Apologies to the people all over the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to your different time zones. You're witnessing the live webinar podcast series. I'm Usman Sayed, and it's my absolute honor and pleasure to have the webinar podcast series with Professor Joao Crespo in the capacity of being the Secretary of the European Membrane Society and in support with Professor George CK from KAUST. We are hosting this webinar podcast series to provide a platform, especially for the young membranologists, to have a glimpse at the life of the beautiful journey of world-famous membranologists. And today, our guest, Professor Joao Crespo, who graciously accepted our invitation, is currently serving as the Professor of Chemical Engineering at the School of Science and Technology, Nova University of Lisbon in Portugal, and also the current Dean of Institute of Chemical and Biological Technology, ITQB Nova in Portugal. He is also the Vice Rector for Research and Innovation and former coordinator of Nova Doctoral School. He is a co-founder of the spin-off company, Zayton Nutraceuticals. He is notably a member of the Portuguese Academy of Engineering and an honorary member of the European Membrane Society. He has to his credit over 400 peer-reviewed papers in the domain of membrane science and engineering. I'm sure by now the number has increased for sure. His research over the last years have focused on membrane materials and processes, bioseparations, water treatment, and valorization of bioresources and advanced process monitoring. Today, it's more like a fanboy moment for me. I've had the utmost pleasure and I was fortunate to be in the group of Professor Joao Crespo for my master thesis and for the doctoral school program under the frameworks of European Union funded Erasmus Mundus membrane engineering programs. So, Professor, this was a very short introduction to your exhaustive CV, which you have. Welcome for today's podcast, and thank you once again for accepting our invitation.
Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm really pleased to be here, and I mean, especially being an initiative from the European Membrane Society, which somehow is also my house. Okay, it's our community. Yeah.
For sure. Well, let's start on a lighter note. I'm sure you don't remember, but a decade ago, when I continued to be in your group for doctoral program, yeah, I had requested you that my name is not Usman, but it's Usman. And then you had humorously replied that your name is not Joao, it's Joao, which again I'm mispronouncing, I'm sure. Your full name is João Paulo Cerejo Gualo Crespo. I mean, like, I'm well aware of the Portuguese naming, but to the audience, could you highlight the Portuguese culture of naming and the story behind your short name having five words?
No, I mean, in Portugal, we have really long names. I have five, which is not really a very long name for Portuguese tradition. And it's very free. So you can have 3 names, 4 names, 5 names, 6 names. My grandsons, they have 6 names. My sons, they have 4 names. So it really changes. But maybe the point is, it's very common that we try to keep family names in our name. And I like to think on that as a link to family, because you see, on my name, I carry the names of 2 grandfathers and grandmothers. I mean, so it's a way to have a link. And for instance, my grandsons, I have a granddaughter and a grandson, they have 4 family names, one of each for each grandfather, grandmother. And so I think this is a way for us to keep the link between the family. Yeah, it's the only way I can see it.
Indeed. Well, starting with your early days of membrane life, do you recollect the day or the moment when you first started to work with membranes or study about membranes?
Yeah, perfectly. I mean, if I do an effort, I could even find the exact day. It not be that difficult. It was during my PhD. So when I finished my studies, I first worked in a factory. I was a process engineer in the fertilizer plant. But after a while, I decided that, okay, that was interesting, but it was not what I wanted to do in my life. So I went for a PhD program, and So I was what is called a teaching assistant at the same time. And my supervisor proposed me a subject on membrane bioreactors, and I was a bit scared, disappointed because no one was working on that. So I thought, okay, I'm working on membrane bioreactors. When I talk with someone, no one knows what it is, no one is working on that. And then things change very, very quickly. But actually, then the first time I touched and I saw membrane was because I did an internship in Toulouse at the time at the INSA Toulouse, a group of Professor Gérard Gomard, which also, together with Professor Roger Benaim, was a pioneer in Europe on membrane bioreactors. The two groups, actually both from INSA, side by side. And so I was there, and this was June 1986. So 39 years ago on membrane bioreactors, ceramic membranes, actually.
All right. And after the story, like, do you remember your first membrane research article? What was it about?
Yeah, I remember, but it's not one that I have that I'm very much attached. I mean, during my PhD, I believe I published 4 papers, and actually, is the last paper for my PhD that I really like a lot. It's at the time there was a journal; it still exists, but at the time it was the top journal in chemical engineering. It was Chemical Engineering Science. And so I finished my PhD in 1990, but probably the paper came out in 93 or something like that, because, well, even now, sometimes things take time, but in those times, things take even much more time. And so that paper that I published in the Chemical Engineering Science is one that I still love it when I read it. It's very fun because it's a long time ago and I still have pleasure when I read it. So it's a bit weird because I have pleasure on, oh, I look a little bit blunt saying that, but really I like it. And it was a paper that I wrote in 2 days during a weekend.
Wow,
Uh,
okay. I no pressure to the students of
no, no pressure, no
your
pressure.
membrane processes.
Um, I think I was in love with that because sometimes the students at the final part of the PhD are very tired of the PhD. Actually, I had a PhD more in a growing process. I was very happy at the end. It was very hard in terms of, even physical work because with this work on membrane bioreactors, sometimes I had to deal with biological part and the membrane part and everything. But I was really very excited with the work, very proud of it. And I knew exactly what I want to write. I wrote it in a weekend. I came to my supervisor. He read it in one day and he said, I changed 2 commas.
That's
That's
wonderful.
it. And then it was accepted on, for me, the best journal at the time. I mean, the two best
That's
journals at the time were Chemical Engineering Science and the IQ journal. So I was very pleased. Yeah,
that's beautiful recollection. Since
yeah,
we are
yeah,
speaking about the firsts in your life, one
yeah.
last question about the first things is, do you remember when you were first invited as an invited speaker in a conference and your
Well,
feelings attached to it?
uh, well, I had a few talks before which were not invited,
Yes,
and
yes,
the very first one that I gave, it was in the US, and I was not invited. This was a regular one, but I
yes.
was absolutely scared 1 month before. 1 month before, I was already having some nightmares with that talk. It was a plenary talk because there was no parallel sessions. It was very big people in the room, so no one remembers what I said, but I remember. But the very first time I was invited, actually it was not really a conference, and I was very proud of that. I was invited to give a class in the EMS summer school in 93.
Hmm,
So I was pretty young at the time,
yes.
and I still remember the feeling of being really proud of being invited to give a class at the EMS summer school. I was 33 years old, so pretty young, and I was really very happy for that. I still remember exactly what I talked about and everything. Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah,
Now let's shift the focus from your early membrane life to European Membrane Society.
yeah.
What was your thought when you were first informed that you are going to be honored as an honorary member of the European Membrane Society, which of course is a huge recognition on a global platform?
Well, to be absolutely frank, and I don't want to sound like false modesty or so, but I thought that there are many other people that could deserve the award much more than I do. To be absolutely frank, and I can say you easily a few names that is people that I admire a lot, and and they were not yet awarded with the honorary membership. But you see, after these 39 years working on membranes, I'm going to complete the 40 years next June on membranes. After that, the membrane community is a kind of house for me. I think I'm a person that establishes an empathy with others very easily. So I look to the community as a community of people that, of course, have common research interests, but also there is a kind of friendship and empathy on that. So being awarded as an honorary member of the society, I believe that that could be the things that make me more emotional and I really I couldn't really find a nice word to say it, but it touches me very, very deeply. Yeah.
I would just like to mention to the audience that Professor Joao Crespo was honored in the Euromembrane 2021, which was held in Denmark. You were also the EMS Council member, I believe, from 98 to 2002. What do you think was the best part of being in the council where you consider it as a family? Uh,
Yeah. Well, I have a very good memories from that council. That council had fantastic people. I don't remember everyone, but I can give you two names because one, both were presidents of EMS. So Marianne Nistrom and Klaus Victor Peinman. So they were part of this council where I was, and so you can see the kind of scientific level also inside the council. And for me, I was still pretty young. It was also a learning process. But again, it's like the sense to belong to a community and to help that community to develop. That was basically that. I just want to add one thing. And the secretary of the society was for many, many, many years Pierre Rimard. And the Pierre Rimard, I think we are about the same age, but is one of the persons that I admire the most. And he was a fantastic secretary. So the ambience on the meetings, we didn't do that many meetings in person. I think we did a few, but not that many. But the ambience was very good.
all right. And this year, the EMS also celebrated Membrane for the first time on the birth anniversary of Professor Enrico Drioli to commemorate his contributions, his legacy in the membrane world. Could you recollect one or two instances where you have beautifully treasured memories with Professor Enrico Drioli?
Well, I have many, many memories from the contact with Enrico. Enrico was a very generous person, and he had a fantastic sense of humor in a very special way. But really, my memory from Enrico was the number of conferences that he gave when he overpassed the time.
Yes.
And that was very funny because someone will tell, okay, Professor, you have 30 minutes to talk. After 30 minutes, he was just on the middle of it. And then he would talk for 45 minutes, 1 hour, and no one dared to interrupt him. And it's funny because I'm glad that people did not interrupt him because listening to him was like listening to someone that had all the ideas popping from his mind. And it was really a fantastic experience. And I was several times in conferences where he did exactly like this. I mean, he was talking and say the new ideas that he has, the new things that he wants to explore and everything. So in some hand, I think that he was always a very young person, because being young is to have expectations, right? Is to you're still dreaming about what you're going to do in life. And I always felt that he has this kind of young, spirit inside himself.
Indeed, I think the membrane community can definitely vouch
Yeah.
to your memories. This year, membrane community unfortunately also saw the passing of Professor Karl Bodecker, with along with Professor Susanna, Professor Klaus, Professor Thomas. You've beautifully penned down an article in the JMS which was published this year. How did you share the equation with such a great professor? And I'm sure audience would like to know more about him and
Yeah.
your camaraderie with him you had.
Yeah. Well, I believe that many of the young people now might not know who Karl Boderker was and what he did and everything. Besides many things, he was a professor at Harburg University, but he was also a researcher at GKSS in Gstaad in Germany. Um, and he was the the editor for Europe of Journal of Membrane Science. So mm, I met him during my postdoc. I did a short postdoc at GBF in Braunschweig in Germany, and I met him because I was working in a project that he was also involved. And a few things on his character were very special. In one hand, again, a very serious person with a very funny sense of humor. I like this when you look so serious, but then you have this sense of humor. But what I really was impressed about Karl Bodecker was because he was a very rigorous person on everything. Rigorous in the sense how do you express your ideas, how you write your equations, how you present the concepts. And this rigor was something that I admire a lot. And I think when you are a researcher, the two things that come to my mind is that you have to be a curious person, you have to have curiosity about things. And the second thing is that you have to be very rigorous the way you look to things, the way you look to data, the way you analyze things. And I think that Karl Bodecker has that sense inside himself. So for me, was one of my sources of inspiration, if you want.
All right. When we look back to the key milestones in your career, what would you say has been the most defining moment in your career, sir?
Well, defining moment, I don't know. What should I say? At the end of the day, you know that very decisive moments sometimes are things that you don't understand or you not perceive at the time. If I now do a kind of a flashback, like in a movie,
Yeah.
one point that for me was very important was my classes of natural sciences when I was 11 years old.
Wow.
So I had a fantastic teacher that when I was 11 years old, he was teaching us the scientific methods. Okay, so if you want to prove an idea, try to design an experiment that shows if that idea is correct or wrong, but try to design it. And when you are 11 years old, to be exposed to this is very unusual. So this was, I think it was the first person that made me think in scientific terms. And so you have those memories that go back to that. So um, the contact with him was very important. Then there were other moments important in determining what I did and what I did not, also
Yeah.
because we lived a life, but there are many lives that we did not live, right?
Lovely.
So
True.
so the change from industry to academia determined a lot. I liked a lot when I was at industry, but the particular work I was doing, I thought that intellectually was not demanding as much as I would like. That's why I moved. And those were two very important moments. And then there were others. I mean, my sabbatical leave in Bath with John Hall was very important. It was, I had some fantastic conversations with him. Also, I had the time to think. Time to think is something that I miss a lot. A time, even time to say, okay, this afternoon I'm going to read a paper and drink a cup of coffee. So having the time for this. So my sabbatical leave in Bath was very important. I could elect these three moments, but probably there are others that I don't even have the perception.
Yeah. Well, has there been a particular project or discovery that stands out in your journey as something that shaped your trajectory that made you to be more inspired in working with membranes?
Well, today I'm supposed to do a short presentation, and I will try to show what are the subjects that really capture my attention.
Yeah.
There were a few things that we did, and I like to think that we did useful contributions to the scientific community. I mean, there was a professor of mine that used to say, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if you published a lot or if you didn't, or whatever you do. What matters is the way you touch people and the way you contribute to that people. So actually, yeah, I think that's really the motto. There were things that I thought we were very much in the front end. I mean, probably our group, together with a group of Richard Noble, were the first to publish the combination, the integration of membranes with ionic liquids. At the time, it was very new. I believe we were the first to do it. I was with Richard Noble in 2000. From what I understood, we were really pioneering that. But later on, I think that also we were one of the first groups to use machine learning. Nowadays, we call it machine learning. At that time, it was not like that. But using machine learning approaches for memory process monitoring.
Yes.
So there were a few things that I like to think that I did a contribution. Okay, maybe others will not perceive that way, but I think that we need also to have a kind of a warm feeling about what we did, right? And well, those two for sure, I have that perception. I'm pushing a lot now this area of membranes made of biopolymers that are not from non-fossil origin. And well, I think that it's our valuable contribution, I would say.
Definitely. Well, among many other notable conferences, you were also nominated as the plenary speaker in ICOM in 2024 in Japan and in Euromember in 2018 in Spain. How was it when all the eyes were on you?
Well, I have to say, it's very funny. I'll tell you something. Until I was like 35, 36 years old, I was always very nervous when I was going to do a conference. Always very nervous. I remember when I was 35 years old, I was giving a regular lecture. It was not plenary or keynote at Euromembrane in Bath, and I was extremely nervous, extremely. But I think that after 35, 36, 37 years, I became very calm. So, to be absolutely frank, so nowadays, if I have to give a plenary in a ICOM or a plenary in Euromembrane, I'm extremely smooth and calm. I'm not stressed. And the other thing is that I like a lot to talk. You can see I'm talking a lot.
No.
So, for me, giving classes or giving a lecture, I'll tell you sincerely, is really a moment of pleasure. Maybe the only one having pleasure is myself, not the others. I'm not sure, but it's really a moment of pleasure. And what I remember from those conferences is actually the moment of pleasure to be talking to a large audience. And the Euromembrane was 2018 in Valencia, and I really. I loved my own conference. When I step out, I said, "Wow, I think it was really good." I was very pleased with myself. Maybe the others could think totally differently, but I think it's important when you do something that you say, "Okay, I did something that could be interesting for the audience," and I have really a very strong feeling about it. Doing at ICOM, maybe I didn't feel it that much. I was very tired because this jet lag is crazy. But of course, giving a plenary at ICOM is always a moment in our lives. And I was very pleased and also very honored that I was invited for that. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'll speak more about the teaching skills later since I
Yeah.
was fortunate to be a student. But moving on, I really need to hold the paper and read out the next question. Well, one of the key highlights of your glorious career is that you've held high positions at relatively early age. Yeah, right. You were, well, starting with at the age of 42, you were the vice president of the Foundation of Science and Technology, Portugal. You were a full professor at the age of 45, academic dean at 46, vice rector of research and innovation, honorary member of the Portuguese Academy of Engineering, coordinator of the MIT Portugal PhD program in bioengineering, NSF equipment exchange management program, and so on and so forth. I'm sure the list is long, all under the age of 50.
Yeah.
The question is, what propelled you to accomplish these at that age? And what did you miss out on doing this?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, one thing that is interesting is that I didn't look for those positions. I was not even stepping in front for those positions. And the very first I had, international doesn't mean anything. In Portugal, it was extremely important because being vice president of our National Science Foundation at the age of 42 was really something. And it's something because it's something that I tend to think back. I'm not a person that reflects a lot if that was good, that was bad, but actually I think many times if that was a right move or a wrong move. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of course, accepting a number of positions like that moves you a bit away from the lab or moves you a bit away from the classroom, right? But I always try to get the balance. So I was very lucky because the people I was working with, I had teams that accepted that I could somehow share my time. But you know something, at the end of the day, I think that some of the things that I did in those positions, at least I like to believe on that, had an impact. And at the end of the day, what you really want is to think, okay, I did things that had an impact on people's life, a positive impact on people's life. And so when I was at our National Science Foundation, I was the coordinator of our national equipment program. So the first large equipment networks in the country, I designed them somehow. I mean, I have the responsibility for that. And when I was at the rectorate, I was the first director of the doctoral school. I mean, so you feel that maybe you are in positions where you could do something that is not strictly research, but it can have a contribution to people's life. And one thing that I'm also very proud is the fact that I was the first director of NGIC. You know what it is. The other people do not know it, which is it was the very first program in Portugal for people to do a PhD in a company's environment. And these were things that I think were different from what happened in the country before, and I think were useful contribution. So at the end of the day, it's always a balance. You think, okay, I miss that, but maybe if I find people that say, okay, the fact that you were involved on this had a positive impact in my life, I think it's very rewarding because we like to feel rewarded, right?
Definitely.
So that's a bit about it. Yeah.
Well, to sum up your questions based on your career, currently you're serving also the Dean of the Institute of Chemical and Biotechnology Institute in ITQB Nova in Portugal. Could you share some insights into your current position, please?
Well, so ITKB Nova, it's one of the organic units of Nova. So it's an institute totally focused on higher education in the sense of only masters and PhD programs. So we don't have bachelor's programs or so. And all the programs that we have are very much embedded in a research environment. So it's really an institute very much research oriented, but involving the students, the master and the PhD students in this kind of environment. The institute is very much focused on, I mean, using as fundamental sciences, chemistry, biology, biochemistry, less engineering, I would say. And so sometimes I feel that scientifically, I'm not fully prepared to help people. Which sometimes I feel I should know much more about all these scientific domains, but I cannot touch everything. Uh, so what I try to do is at least to understand or to provide conditions that people can really develop their careers. I'm very much concerned on trying to provide conditions here that people understand that their career is something that can evolve, they can dream about doing things, and they have the conditions to do it. So the pleasure that I take from this is to create conditions for this to happen. I always think that an institution is made by people and good decision mechanisms. This is the two things that I think are important in an institution. So I'm here to try to build, I hope, good decision mechanisms to help people in the institute. But I'm very proud of this institute. I have fantastic people working here.
Definitely, we can all agree to that. Let's board the train of Professor Joao as the researcher. Every scientific journey comes with plenty of obstacles. What has been one of your biggest hurdles in your research life in the field of membranes, and how did you overcome it, sir?
Well, on the beginning of the career, the biggest hurdle was funding, to be frank. I mean, you cannot build a large research group, or at least a group with several interests and certain dynamics without significant funding. And funding in Portugal, it's not that fantastic if I compare with other countries. I think it's I
Uh,
think it was a break in the connection, right?
Yes, now it's clear, sir.
Okay, so I was saying that the funding was really the first problem. I got my first EU project when I was 35, which was great and helped me to start establishing my group. But nowadays, I believe that to build a group, much more important than funding is to attract people with quality, with human and scientific quality. I know that there is a link between funding and attracting good people because good people also like to have good salaries and makes sense. But sometimes you have funding and you do not attract good people. So I would start by saying the beginning of my career, funding was a concern. I think that now the concern is how to attract people that we like to work with. Yeah. Okay. You were in the group, so we know what I mean. I think that at the end of the day, what a group is the people that is there, the quality of the people that is there. And the quality of the people is not also how deep you think, and it's also the way you interact internally, the way you relate and everything, right? So building a spirit of a group, it's something that takes some time and requires an investment. Yeah.
And with the recent excitement of the Nobel Prizes being awarded, which one do you think of late, which you've witnessed, deserves global recognition in the from the field of membranes?
I'll tell you a story. I'm
I
I'm
would
reading
love to hear.
I'm reading a book. Actually, is a theater play. It's an old one. It's not a recent one. It's maybe a book with 25 years old or so, called Oxygen. And the book is a story. It's a fiction because the Nobel Prize decided to attribute the Nobel Prize uh, to like in the past. Okay, so you go back in past. So here they decided to give the Nobel Prize to the ones that contributed to the discovery and the understanding of oxygen. Okay, so Lavoisier, one of them. I mean, you see the story. Okay, and I found the book fantastic because you have fantastic moments along the science history of people that were not rewarded because there was no Nobel Prize. So I found the idea very, very, very funny. And so if you, now I'm coming to your question. If you ask me where I should give the Nobel Prize or where I would give the Nobel Prize if I take the decision, I would give it to Lavin Surirayan.
Wow, okay,
Yeah.
indeed.
So I think that would be a Nobel
It's
Prize from the past. But I really would like that the new generations understand the importance that Love and Suryayan had in the membrane field. I was very lucky because last year I was in India in a conference that was in honor of Suryayan, so I had the chance to be honoring him. Um, but I really think that the impact of their work
yes,
was absolutely tremendous, right?
indeed.
So they were a little bit like the Watson and Crick on in biology. Okay,
True.
yeah. So, so if I would think in a Nobel Prize in membrane science, I would think on that.
Yes, all right. Well,
It's a polite answer because then I don't mention anyone that is still working. Okay.
I could already imagine that. Well, let's
Yeah.
move to the next coach of Professor Jean's life as a teacher. I would be doing definitely injustice to this podcast if I don't mention your teaching skills. I mean, I was lucky enough to be a student in more than half a dozen countries, and without disrespecting the wonderful teachers I've had, I would like to mention that you've been the best teacher I've ever seen. So, you've carried out your several membrane-based teaching duties in various parts of the world. Do you enjoy it more than research and administration? And what made you choose a career that involves teaching?
Well, I'll tell you something. Teaching is something that I would not never like to quit doing.
Oh,
And for instance, well, I don't want to be unfair with anyone, but sometimes we have these systems at university. If you do more research, you do less teaching. I hate that idea. It is
oh.
like is like teaching being a penalty. Teaching is not a penalty. It's a moment of pleasure, at least to me. Maybe not to the students, but But to me, I mean, there are things that I don't like in teaching. I mean, I don't like to repeat the same class. I mean, if I have two classes for in the same cohort, I don't like to repeat the class because although the students are always different, but I don't like that thing of repeating in the same week class. But I really love to teach because you see, I love to talk, as you can see. So teaching, it's just about communication. It's about being with someone and trying. Yeah, I know that I came from a school where we talk a lot and the classes are still very much on the sense on transferring knowledge. And I think that nowadays we are evolving to a totally different way of doing things. But still, what I found interesting is that when you do teaching, you have to have two things. First, you have to be interested in the students. I mean, you have to be interested on them as persons. You have to be interested on thinking that these guys, these persons, and they have aspirations and they are here spending their time because they are expecting something. So thinking on them as someone that are important for you also, yeah? You want to invest on them. I think if you don't feel that, I mean, it's better not to teach. Yeah? So that's one thing. The second thing is really the way you do your classes should be something that they feel what they are taking there will help them to do things in a different way or in a better way. Okay? Maybe it's to ask too much and to think that we can do more than we can.
True.
But I like to think in that way. And I'll tell you something. If I have a student that after 20 years comes to me and say, "Oh, I was your student and I loved your class." I mean, if someone tells me that, I tell you, the pleasure that I get is much more than to have a paper accepted in a high-rated journal. By far, I'll tell you, by far. Because in one case, you write a fantastic paper, which is great, but on the other case, maybe there was someone which career was touched. I mean, like my professor when I was 11 years old. He
Yes.
never knew that I still today remember his classes.
Mhm.
It's that for sure. I never have the chance to tell him that
Yes.
I loved those classes, but he marked me all over the years. So I think that there is something fantastic. There was a movie where they say that the teacher is someone that touches the future, and I love that sentence.
Amazing. I should note this down. Well, you've already mentioned three times in this podcast that you love to talk, but I can also mention you that I can see that there are so many people who are loving to hear what you're speaking. So moving on, you're also the founding member of the steering committee of WAM's World Association of Membrane Societies. In this capacity, you also traveled to Africa last year to give some classes. Could you share some insights into your role of WAMS for those who don't know about this World Association of Membrane Societies?
Well, worms, I think, is a concept. I think we have to be fair and recognize that I believe that worms was very much an initiative from Bart van der Bruggen when he was the president of EMS, and Bart is a person that I appreciate a lot, and I think he is the kind of person that likes also to think on others and to see how we can have an impact. And worms as a profile that somehow is difficult because you see, WAMS is an association of different regional membrane associations like EMS or NAMS or the Asian Association and the African one, of course. And so all of them have their own initiatives. So we could think, okay, why WAMS if they have already their own initiatives? So sometimes it's difficult to think, okay, what could be really the agenda for WAMS that can make an impact, right? And at the end of today, what I think is really where we can make more impact is really to try to create, you know, context. I mean, either videos or giving classes or so that help people that have less access to that kind of information. Some kind is not less access of information, is less access even to experience. Because you see, you could say, okay, I can post a video on the internet and you don't have to go to Ethiopia to give classes in a course, right?
True.
But again, I believe that going there and giving a class in person and talking with the people there is different from just sharing a video, right? So I think that one of the roles that it can have is really to go or to touch people that have less access, not only to information, but more than the information, a little bit to experience, and so, and this is a way to share that experience.
All right. Now moving focus from teacher to being an organizer, the birth of Imagine Membrane Conference series, like what, how, like what's the story behind such a beautiful conference series you and Professor Thomas Schaffer have initiated?
Yeah. Well, the Imagine Memory is a funny story because uh, Thomas knows. I mean, I'm going to say that he was one of my favorite PhD students, but he knows that. I mean, not for any particular reason, but Thomas, he has a very curious mind, and that is something that is very challenging. I mean, of course, it was not only him. What is really interesting in a student is like you. I mean, when you start talking about something, and then the conversation evolves. I mean, so you can receive a lot from them. And when Thomas was a student here with me, we discussed lots of different things, even projects that then I developed after he left. But one of the things that we thought was, oh, it would be fantastic to have a conference in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean so you can have groups from the US or Canada or America coming to the Azores and people from Europe coming to the Azores in the middle of the Atlantic. And additionally, because Azores is my favorite region of Portugal, it's a beautiful region, and you know it because you have been there. So, so the concept of the conference was like this, bringing people and give them time to talk, to discuss. And so some people say, oh, it's not a conference, it's a kind of holidays with some talks in between. But what's wrong with that? Come on, I mean, on each day we work half of the day, which is a lot. I mean, if you have like 4 or 5 hours where you are discussing science in a room, but then you have 4 or 5 hours where you are doing whale watching, and if you want to discuss science, but if you don't want to discuss the whales or the weather or the things in life, I think it's really nice atmosphere. And Imagine Marine for me is a very special, really very special conference. I have to say that the name was it was I didn't coin the name, it was Thomas that was the name, and I think it was a fantastic idea to call it Imagine Membrane. And what I like in the conference is exactly the time for discussion. So as you know, after the talks, we have a long period of discussion, very open discussion, and so is a conference that I love. I mean, we did 4 editions. I hope we can do a few more, but yes, I love to do it.
Thanks to my past and present supervisors and their fundings, I've attended all the 4 editions. And the term I would like to call for Imagine Membrane is scientific tourism, right? So,
It can be bad, interpreted in a bad way, but
all
yeah.
right. Let's try to conclude with the last two questions in this interview before we move on to your scientific presentation. If you could go back to the beginning of the career, knowing what you know now, is there something you would like to say to your younger self or try to do something different?
To my younger self. You know, when you live a life, I was saying that there are many lives that you don't live, right?
Good.
So I hope not to disappoint anyone, but if I would live a new life, I would try something totally different because I love movies. I love cinema. It's really it's not a hobby. It's something that I love since I was very young. The thing is that I don't think I have the talent to be a good movie director.
Mm.
But if I had the talent, that would be a career that I would try. I mean, because that's something, photography, cinema, two things that I like a lot.
Yeah.
You know, when I was a kid, I'll go very briefly. When I was a kid, I have an older sister. She's 2 years older than me. And my sister, she was fantastic. I mean, she would write stories for me. She would make fantastic, drawings. She was playing the piano. She had lots of talent. And when I was a kid, I was thinking, come on, my sister, she has all the talents. I have no talent at all, you know? So but I didn't feel that in a way I'd like to have instead of her. Yeah, I had it much more in admiration point of view, right? So one thing that I really miss is that I don't think I have any talent on those. Uh, I am what some people call a contemplative, someone can look and enjoy. but not really a creator, right? So anyhow, if I had the talent, I'll be on the area of moving, making, or photography or something like that. Totally different from. Don't get me wrong. I really like what I do and what I did. I still expect to do things that can be exciting for myself and for others. But yeah, as your question said, if you do something different, then I'll do something totally different.
All right. And the last question, I'm sure without which this podcast would be incomplete if I don't mention Dr. Teresa Crespo, your wife, and I have huge respect and I admire and I love her a lot. A renowned scientist. How is the dynamics when your spouse is also one of your collaborators with whom you worked in the past?
Well, actually, we don't collaborate that much, but yes, we have a few works together. We met when we were both PhD students, actually. Um, and well, she's a biologist. So I have some projects where we collaborate together. One thing that people find a bit maybe strange is that we never discuss work at home. Um, and when you do it at work, we do it very formally. We mark in the agenda that the meeting at this time, as I do with other people. So we have a formal meeting and we discuss. But you see, is the advantage or the advantage? It's the funny part of talking with someone with a totally different brain,
True.
totally different background. She's a biologist, I'm a chemical engineer. So as someone said, I have a quantitative mind. She has a qualitative mind. No, I'm not putting a plus or a minus. It's different. Yeah. You can have a qualitative mind and be extremely creative. And creativity, Einstein said it. I mean, creativity is much more important than knowledge. So I respect people that are very creative. So it's interesting that in that sense we have different backgrounds, but also different minds, different ways to look to things. And in the research group is the same. It's nice to have people with different backgrounds, and you know that in our group we had a mechanical engineer, George. Now we are working a lot with Francisco Nascimento, which is also a biologist. So we try a little bit to combine, and I think we should combine more. But yes, somehow yes.
Thank you so much. And this ends the interview with Professor Jean Crespo. I had the huge pleasure and had fun listening to you. I'm sure others would definitely leave their comments. And if you have any questions about the interview or the next scientific presentation, please leave your questions in the comment section. We shall get back to it after the scientific talk. And now it's again a pleasure to invite Professor Jean to have a short presentation on his talk titled Membranes, What Else? It was a very creative and curious based abstract, which I'm sure others have read it on the EMS portal. So Professor Jean, again, the floor is all yours. If you can share the screen and start the presentation.
Okay, let's see how it works. Okay. Is it working? Can you see it?
I can
Is
hear
it?
it.
Can you see it?
Um, there is, yes, Professor, we can see
Yeah,
it.
you can see it.
Could you
Okay.
just move to a next slide and then come back to the main slide? Just
Sure,
to
sure. Sorry. Do you see the next slide?
1 minute of just some time, Professor. There is a bit of lag between what we speak on Zoom and what is telecasted live. So I'm just waiting if,
So nothing happened.
yes, everything is fine, Professor. You can start
Okay.
with slide number 1. Yeah.
Okay, but it looks a bit slow. Okay. Um, I'm going back to slide 1. Okay.
Yes, we can start with this.
Okay. Usman, I know that I prepared too many slides, but what I'll do is that I'm not going to explain them. So I'm not going to talk like if I'm doing a conference, okay?
Yes.
Because of course I like to typically to explain things. So here I will fly a little bit faster, okay?
Sure.
So I'll do it that way. Membranes, what else? Because yes, what else? You have membranes all around, and membranes is what makes me interested. The second slide I have, okay, is this one. Are you seeing? This is a part of a painting from Monet, and Monet painted lots of water lilies. Okay, so he painted, I don't know how many, paintings of water lilies. And it's very funny because he was painting, I don't know, maybe hundreds or 100 paintings of water lilies, because that was something that was in his mind permanent, and that it was something that was interesting to him. And one day I came to a sentence of this Portuguese writer. Can you see it? Are you seeing it? Okay, I hope so.
Yes, Professor.
Okay. And this writer, Virgílio Freire, once wrote that intimately he felt that he was always writing the same book. And it's funny because he published many books, which means that somehow the kind of things that are inside us and that interest us are very permanent in life. Even if you move from subjects, somehow there is a link between things. So if I can use them as a support, I would say that each one of us has his own book. And my own book is very much related with what? Is very much related with transport regulation. I like to think on membranes as a way to regulate transport. And there is a very large diversity of mechanisms available. And when studying transport regulation, I think it's very important to understand the molecular interactions that are involved. So this is a perspective that I like a lot. The other point that I'm very interested is playing with membrane topography. Why? Because playing with the membrane topography gives you a way to somehow put the energy where you need it. Where do you need energy in a mass or in a heat transfer process? You need it at the interface. So membrane topography may help us to create turbulence and convective transport near interfaces. So that's where the energy should be put, not at the bulk of a fluid, but at the interface where the mass and heat transfer occurs. Then I'm very interested on everything that is related with process monitoring. This was an interest that started a long time ago. I like this sentence of seeing without being seen. I had also here, with the help of machine learning, not forcefully, but sometimes it can be interesting to combine the two. And finally, this interest on using developed membranes that come from renewable, non-fossil fuel sources. Okay, and this discussion about immortal membranes versus this kind of membranes. So these are really the pillars of the things that make me dream. Let's say that keep me enthusiastic. Okay, let's see if I can move slide. It's going very slowly. Okay, I'm going really to go very quickly through the slides. I'm showing slides from works that can have 20 years, right? So I was not concerned to show you what I did on the last 5 years or so. I'm taking different kind of examples, but in this example, what I wanted to show was the possibility to combine a reaction or a bioreaction with the transport and to regulate it. And the idea here is to have carbonic anhydrase, which can convert CO2 into bicarbonate and then again to CO2, and combining a biological reaction with a membrane to support it, and with that organize the physical space. So I can have reaction and transport mechanisms combined between the two. I'm not going into details, but one example, we were very interested to separate CO2 from xenon. Xenon is a very interesting anesthesia gas, and we want to remove CO2 to apply this process for the rebreathers in surgery applications for operations. And you see, because when you breathe, you have been through anesthesia with xenon, but you need to remove the CO2 so you can rebreathe again the xenon. So the separation of the two is very difficult because you see the kinetic diameter is very similar. But if you combine a biological reaction with an enzyme, In this case, we combine that with ionic liquid supported in the membrane. You can have high permeabilities and you can have much higher selectivity. So it's an interesting combination. I don't think we do that much on combining reaction and transport on the same system. I want to say that when I was doing my PhD, I was working on biological membrane reactors, so membrane bioreactors. And so this link with the bio is something that I like a lot. And so I was talking about enzymes, but the other aspect that we were interested is that what happens to a protein when it goes through a porous media, because we were interested to study the fractionation of proteins. And this interest started during my sabbatical leave with Joao in Bath. And so we wanted to understand not only which proteins is retained and which protein is permeating, but we want to understand if the conformation of the protein changes when it goes through a porous media. And without going too much details, what I can show you is that if we choose a very tight membrane, for instance, in this case, a 10 kilodalton membrane, and I add a protein beta-lactoglobulin, which is larger than this molecular mass, you can make it go through because you apply extensional forces, so the protein somehow unfolds inside the pores and comes out on the other side. And without having any marker or whatever, just based on the natural fluorescence of the protein, what happens is that when the protein unfolds, the fluorescence of the protein changes, and I can very easily know if I'm changing the protein conformation. And this is very important for many processes because the conformation relates with the function. So you can see here that the retentate and the feed, they have the same kind of excitation here. Emission here. So they are excited than the emission here, but the permeates, they emit in a different position. Why? Because the protein is extended, the more hydrophobic regions of the protein are exposed, and when that happens, you add what is called a redshift. A redshift, so to higher wavelengths. When you do that with a membrane with a larger pore, the effect is much smaller. You can see here for different pressures, the effect is much smaller than here when you have a tighter membrane. And here the changes that you observe are related with the permeation time length, because if you have a longer permeation time length, then the membrane-protein interactions also increase. What I want to tell you from this is you can have very nice ways to monitor what is happening in a non-invasive way because I'm using the natural fluorescence of the proteins. Now, this study with proteins, we also study protein crystallization. I'm not going to give details, but when we did the studies on protein crystallization in collaboration with Reyes Malhado in Saragossa and Professor Tigler in Twente, we could design membranes with different kind of features at the surface. So I'm not going into detail, but that makes us interested exactly on the possibility to develop membranes with a design topography. This is a part of the work that Sylvain Pawlowski, which is now in our group, also as a assistant professor, but at the time he was a PhD student. And this was in collaboration with Kitty Niemeyer, at the time still in Twente, and Michael Sachs at Vetsus. And what Sylvain was doing was by hot pressing, she was designing these different kind of features at the surface. Why do you want to do this? Because if you design these features at the surface, depending on the fluid dynamics at the surface, you can create turbulence and convective eddies. So you can create convective transport at the surface. Why you want that? Because you want to improve your mass transfer at the surface. For instance, imagine that you have a membrane with extremely high permeability for seawater desalination, so you have a huge water permeability. But if the membrane has a high rejection, what happens near the surface is that you have a boundary layer, you have a concentration polarization, if you want, so extreme that at the end of the day, your membrane is not delivering what it's supposed to do. So what you need is to have very good engineering design. You should have promote this turbulence at the surface. You can do it with playing with the topography of the membrane, but you can also play, for instance, with spacers that are designed for specific kind of application. Yeah. So I like very much this idea that you can improve the mass transfer, or you can put the energy where you actually need it. And these were some of the computation fluid dynamic simulations that Sylvain did for the chevron corrugated membranes. And what you could see is it's difficult to explain because the drawing is difficult, but you see on this kind of when you have these chevrons, if you have one membrane, you put another membrane on top, you can create movements where the fluid has to go up and then to go down, okay, to make this kind of movements up and down. And when you do that, you see what happens to your mass transfer. I mean, this is really the estimation of the mass transfer coefficients. You can have these are extremely high mass transfer coefficients, I would say. But I like this concept that you don't put the energy in the bulk, you put the energy at the interface. Okay, this is my love for cinema, so you know for sure this movie from Alfred Hitchcock, Rear Window. It's a fantastic movie. Not very politically correct because James Stewart is looking to the legs of the girl, but okay, that's part of it. So monitoring without being seen. And I start with the work we did with Thomas Schaefer. So this is really a long time ago. And for me, it was a fantastic piece of work because we were doing online monitoring of evaporation using mass spectrometry. At the time with Thomas, we did evaporation. So what you could see is that we were increasing the concentration of a certain solid in water, in this case was ethyl acetate. So we were doing steps of concentration. And you see, this is the response of the detector. We could very clearly follow the concentration of ethyl acetate in the permeate of a evaporation system. At the time, I found this extremely elegant. I mean, Thomas did a fantastic work here because we were able to online in real time monitor the concentration of a permeant of a solid in a evaporation system. And after that, we applied this to many other things. Carla Brazing also worked in this system, and we extended the work to other applications. Actually, we also extended this concept to online mass spectrometry for time-lag measurements of multi-component gas mixtures, which is a work that we did together with John Jensen from IPM in Calabria. And it's interesting because you see here the profiles that we can get a long time until you reach stationary state. It's really a very interesting piece of working, I mean, in my perspective. Let me show you briefly some work that we did. This is the work with molecular probes because I really like this concept that we can monitor without being very invasive. In this case, what we did was you use a molecular probe. This is a ruthenium-based molecular probe that we disperse inside the membrane. And this probe responds to the local concentration of oxygen. So by using this probe inside the membrane, we could create, with the help of, in this case, a laser confocal microscopy, we could create a profile of concentration of oxygen inside the membrane. We never published this bit of work. We published other things, but not this bit. It's a pity because I think it's the only report of oxygen profile in a membrane, in a dense membrane. But a similar approach we did and we published, and we did in collaboration with friends from Saragossa and from Calabria. This was done with this was the PhD work of Sergio Santoro, and in collaboration with Alberto Figoli and Reis Malhada. I love this paper, and Alberto is probably joking with me because I show it so many times. But using the same concept, what we did was in a membrane distillation process, we introduced the molecular probe inside the membrane, so we could measure the temperature at the surface of the membrane, not 10 micrometers away or 20 micrometers away, but at the surface of the membrane, meaning that we could map the temperature on the feed side and the temperature on the downstream side. And so we can, point by point, even determine the temperature polarization. It is extremely exciting for me, but I like this concept. Nowadays, we are again exploring molecular probes for oxygen and also starting with the molecular probes for calcium. This is the work that we did where we use some machine learning approaches. The basic idea was, well, actually, two-dimensional fluorescence. I think that we were the very first to do two-dimensional fluorescence combined with machine learning at the time. The first work was the PhD of Gundula Wolf. And at that time, we were combining the fluorescence maps that we were getting together with neural networks. Nowadays, in our group, Claudia Galinha is exploring this kind of technique, but she mostly uses PLS for combining with the data. So you see, this is a kind of a fingerprint of a feed of a bioreactor. This is a fingerprint of the permeate, and this is a fingerprint of the bioreactor itself inside. And don't forget that this is data, so we can combine this with operating conditions and do predictions. Just to give you an example, in this case, just by doing the fluorescence of the permeate and measuring the transmembrane pressure, we could predict the COD concentration in the permeate. I think this is really exciting because for monitoring these systems is really very fun. Okay, just to the final bit to talk a little bit about membranes from biopolymers, so we don't end our plastic materials or our membranes to end up like this. So a colleague of mine, she's working a lot on producing biopolymers. This is the case of a biopolymer that she produces that is very rich in galactose, so she call it galactopol. You can just get it by precipitation in ethanol. It precipitates very easily. You can clean it from the biomass, and then you can get it even more cleaner, or you can even remove proteins and other stuff. You can remove them by dialysis, and you get a polymer even cleaner. And with that, you can produce membranes. So in this case, we use a polyether sulfone membrane, and we have this exopolysaccharide top layer. So this polymer is typically sugar based. So we have somehow to play with it. We have to reticulate the top surface to be sure that it will not dissolve in water. It has some resistance to water. But you see, these results are for pervaporation, for dehydration of ethanol. And you see, this is the water content, 5% or 10%. And you have fantastic selectivities and very decent fluxes. Okay, so here just to compare the permeability for ethanol and for water. So you see, for ethanol, you have to multiply by 10 to the 14, for this is 10 to the 12. And so the selectivities are extremely high. Of course, in the presence of more water, the membrane becomes more flexible and you lose some selectivity, but the results are really very exciting. And here, what you have is a membrane that is produced with a biopolymer. Of course, then we have to think in terms of the support, because in this case, the support is polyether sulfone, but you can have other types of supports. The final bit that we are interested in now, and I'm very excited with this, we have a project on bacterial cellulose. So I have a colleague, Francisco Nascimento, he's a biologist. He can produce bacterial cellulose as you see it here. So it's a kind of hydrogel. It's extremely pure, high crystallinity. Actually, it has a higher crystallinity than the plant cellulose that we are obtaining. And of course, what you can do from this is many different things. One thing that you can use is you can just take the membrane, you can just dry it, and what you can get is a kind of a net that you can use as an air filter. You can play with the biological conditions, you can play with the carbon source, and you can play with the co-substrate. In this case, we are playing with the co-substrate, but we play with different carbon sources, and you get this kind of net. And with this net, which you can characterize, of course, with this net, you can see what is the permeability to nitrogen or to oxygen whatsoever, according to the mean pore size. And what you can see very easily is that typically, if you want to retain things above 0.2 microns, which is the size of the smallest microorganism, you can easily get this kind of membranes with a high permeability for air. Okay, so this could be used as a air filter. We are working on other applications in ion exchange membranes. We have a recent paper coming now in Journal of Membrane Science, where you use these bacterial cellulose doped with the transporters for lithium selective transport. So finally, really in terms of circular economy, I think there is a huge opportunity to use byproducts for the production of biopolymeric membranes. It's very interesting because I think there will be a market, I really believe there will be a market for single-use disposable membranes, for instance, biotech, biomedical application. Why to have a membrane that lives forever if I am going to use it just once? So I think there will be a very interesting market here, but also for processing organic solvent, because the ones I show you are extremely resolvent in organic solvents. The galactopol that I show you is extremely resistant in organic solvents. So it's funny because what we need is membranes that have a very high stability under operating conditions, and then a low stability or high biodegradability under environmental conditions after disposal. And the two things are not incompatible because the ambients are different and you can play with that. So somehow, in a very brief way, I try to give you a taste or flavor of the things that I'm really interested on. Think on the transport mechanisms one end, put the energy where you need, apply new monitoring systems to learn about your process, and go for these biopolymeric members. I think these are some of the ideas that I'm very much excited about. So finally, I start with with a Portuguese writer. I end with another Portuguese writer, José Cardoso Pires, who wrote, "To become a writer, first you need to learn all the rules, but then you have to forget them." So I think that's very important because I think in research you have to do the same. You have to know the rules, and then sometimes to be creative, you have to forget a few. Forget. Finally, I want to acknowledge, but I had such a long list of acknowledgement that I decided to put this as like that. To my students, because my students are really uh, my source of pleasure. I can say that. Well, saying like this sounds a bit weird, but it's really the students that make us enthusiastic about things. Of course, co-workers, many of the co-workers were my students, are not, but I really love to be with someone which is a colleague and have the chance to discuss. I mean, discussing is something that I really love to do with them. And finally, the membrane community, which is my membrane family. It's really where I feel at home, is my membrane community, which, I mean, after 39 years changed a lot. There are people that I really miss a lot. Some, I mean, are not with us, but it's a family that is being renovated, and there is lots of young, enthusiastic people around that I'm very pleased to see, taking the lead now on the membrane community. And I think this is my last slide. Maybe should I stop sharing?
Yes, Professor. Thank you so much, as always, for your enriching talks. I'm sure everyone enjoyed witnessing it. And if you have any comments or questions, please don't hesitate to ask in the comment section in the YouTube channel. Professor, before we move to the last session of question answers, I have a surprise 5 minutes rapid fire game questions with you, where I'm going to put you now in a spot.
Wow.
So like three quick games with quick questions. The only rule is you shouldn't think much. What
Okay.
comes in your mind, you need to answer.
Okay.
Starting with something easier. What do you prefer? Mountains or beaches?
Mountains.
I know you love coffee. What do you prefer for breakfast? A bad coffee or a good tea? Let's wait for the connection of Professor Joao Crespo's
Yeah,
internet.
I think
Yeah,
I'm back. So I just served the bad coffee or
or good tea.
come on, then a good tea.
Good tea. All right.
Bad
What
coffee is awful.
what's worse for the Portuguese? Bad weather when you're at beach or bland food for lunch?
Now, bad food for lunch is awful.
Is offer. Okay. What's more time consuming? Reviewing a badly written average article or an excellent article with breakthrough results?
I mean, probably the first one is more time
Time
consuming.
consuming. All right.
Yeah.
What's more enjoyable? Working in the lab with colleagues on an interesting project or in a meeting room with industrialists or investors to procure more attractive funding for research?
I mean, you know the answer. You know the answer.
Yes,
So
yeah.
yeah,
To
but
discuss
but you know,
this,
but I miss being with the lab coat.
of course, I
Yeah.
don't know that. To discuss research, what's more interesting? Meeting with students or meeting with colleagues?
It's different. Yeah, I have to answer, right?
Yes.
In this case, you got me. You got me. You said not to think too much. I
Yes.
was going to say meeting with the students, but it's not true. I mean, if you are really talking about going deep in research,
Of
meeting with
course, yes,
communities, because they have a different background of information. Yeah.
definitely. What's relatively easier, academics or administration?
No, academics are much worse than administration. Academics tend to complicate a lot. That's true. We are very complicated people. I have a story for you about it.
All right. What do you prefer working on? Polymeric membranes or ceramic membranes?
I have a high interest on ceramic membranes, but I did not do much on it
All
actually.
right.
But I'll tell you, ceramic membranes, depending on the energy that you have to put in, can be also looked as a very renewable material.
New building, yes.
So I think it's interesting to look to them. Yeah.
All right. What do you prefer, spiral wound modules or hollow fiber modules? Anyone, quickly.
Depends on the purpose. If it is to hit someone, spiral wound.
What do you prefer, membrane contactors or membrane separators?
Can be contactors. You can do everything with them.
Everything. All right. You prefer lab scale innovation or industrial scalability?
Yeah. Let's start with the first one because the ideas start on the first one.
All right. The last question in this game is, you're a better husband or father?
Better husband or father? Wow, you have
Quickly,
to ask.
quickly,
You
quickly.
ask them. You ask them. Better husband, not for sure. I think that Teresa complains a lot. So
All
probably
right.
father.
Better father or grandfather?
Oh, much better grandfather.
Better grandfather or better researcher?
No, better grandfather.
Better grandfather or better teacher?
Better grandfather.
All right.
I'm a very good grandfather. I think so.
I
I hope so.
I will ask them after a few years.
I hope
Well,
so.
let's move to the next round. It's called as never have I ever. So you should say have you or have you not. Never have I explained something brilliantly and then realized I was on mute in an online class or online meeting. Yes or no?
I don't remember. Probably
All
no.
right. Never have I ever accidentally used the wrong units in a calculation and did not notice until reviewers' feedback or proofreads.
No, it happened to me already.
All
Maybe
right.
not on the proofreads, but yes.
Yes, okay. Never have I ever written an entire project grant in a caffeine-fueled weekend frenzy.
Caffeine. I like coffee, but I don't work on caffeine, so
All right.
that is not
So,
an issue.
all right. So never have I ever added novel or innovative in the earlier career stage to make my abstract sound cooler.
You know that I hate the word
I know, that's what I'm
novel.
asking.
You
Have
know
you in
that.
your early stage
Yeah,
career?
probably I did it. Probably I did
All
it.
right. Never have I ever written, further research is needed just to end the paper.
Maybe not in that way, but for sure I did.
All right. Never have I ever overslept and missed a morning meeting or morning class.
Yeah, I'm an early bird, so I'm not very much to sleep. For me, it's worst if I oversleep after lunch because
Okay.
now sometimes I feel
All
sleepy.
right. Never have I ever repeated a student's question and replied with, "That's a great question," just to buy some time.
No, I don't remember to do that. I'm very
All right.
honest on that.
All right. Never have I ever skipped the gala conference dinner to revise a grant proposal just before the deadline.
No, but once I got to sleep after I got to sleep and I missed the gala dinner, and actually I did a plenary lecture on that day.
All right. Okay.
So that was not very
You're
nice. That
forgetting.
happened to me. That happened to me.
Never have I ever lost track of time while answering someone's question during Q&A after the talk in a conference or so.
Yeah, that can happen.
All right.
The
And
chairperson put you in.
all right, last question in this round. Never have I ever whispered finally when someone asked a smart question from the audience.
I didn't understand the question. Sorry, I didn't.
Never have I ever whispered finally when
Oh,
someone
okay,
from
okay,
the
okay.
audience asked a smart question, or an interesting question.
Well, it's human. I mean, if you
Yeah.
are tired and if your brain is burning, that you can feel that.
All
Yeah.
right. So the last round of questions, it's called as rapid fire questions. You
Okay.
should answer quickly, whatever comes first in your mind. What is one misconception in the general membrane community about Portuguese that you want to clear it today?
Wow. General misunderstanding is that Portugal is just a country for sun and good food.
Good.
We
Yeah.
we have
It-
other things.
it's much more, of course. Your most memorable conference you attended in your early stage career.
Hmm. I don't know. I remember some talks,
All
but
right.
the conference as a whole.
As a whole.
The conference as a whole. I don't know. Maybe the first time I went to a Gordon,
Gordon
the
conference.
first Gordon I went in 2000,
In the US.
organized
All
by
right.
Rich Noble.
Okay, great. Besides Imagine Membrane, which is the most memorable scientific event you have organized?
Yeah, I did not organize that many. Um, I think that maybe when I organize the Ibero-American conference in Sintra, I
All
think
right,
that was a pretty good one. Yeah.
great. Well, which membrane researcher outside Europe did you consider a membrane celebrity in your early stage career?
Well, more than one.
All right,
Outside Europe. I'll give you two names.
all right.
Well, I could give three. Well, I'll give you three names.
Okay,
Because
quickly.
I invited the three of them to the meeting in Korea that I organized. Actually, I should
Yes,
mention that
yes.
one. Uh, it was Richard Noble,
All right.
Ed Kessler,
At Casa. Okay, yes.
and George Belfort.
Wonderful.
I
Awesome.
had the three of them in the same conference.
Oh, that's quite an achievement. One scientific myth you wish would disappear.
What? Sorry?
One scientific myth
Oh,
you wish disappears.
uh, I don't know. There is something that, well, it's not a scientific myth, it is more like an attitude. It is when people say um, that you should sacrifice perfection or you should sacrifice things very well done
Yeah,
if you want to have things to be done. I don't like that. I think it's possible to do things very well and still do it.
yes.
But okay, that's a more general.
Duly noted words of
Yeah.
wisdom. Well, the most underrated material in membrane technologies.
The most underrated
Yes,
material,
material in membrane technologies.
the potting material.
All right, okay.
It can,
Thank,
okay.
thank you. Which is the one country you have never been to, but you would love to visit someday?
Oh, so many.
Quickly,
A lot of.
quickly. Whatever
Just
comes first mind.
quickly one. No, quickly one. Maybe Vietnam.
Vietnam. All right, great. Quick reason. Why are you not active on social media?
Wow, wow. Because your life is personal, and I think I don't need to share it with everyone. I can share it with the good friends, and for that I don't need social media.
All right, that's wonderful to hear. Do you believe there are many sides to who Jean Crespo is, or you are an open book to those close to you?
But for those close to me, I am open book.
All
That's for
right.
sure.
Uh, I know the answer, but I'm still asking you. Do you keep a track of your citations on a regular basis?
Times to times, I look to Google Scholar.
All
Times to
right.
times, just to see. But you know something, the papers that I publish that I like the most are not the ones that are most cited, and I believe this happens with everyone.
I'm well aware of.
I could do my own ranking, and for sure is not the ranking of the most cited ones.
All right. Do you believe that a researcher can ever truly retire?
Yes, I think.
Okay.
Think researcher in the sense doing research for purpose. Okay. The other thing is to have the brain of a researcher, which means being curious to understand, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, curious to understand is something that is inherent to the person. I mean, not because you retire, you stop doing so. But if we exclude that and we think like being active in the sense of producing a research piece of work, yes, I believe it's possible.
All right.
I think it's much more difficult to stop teaching.
True. Teaching. Favorite part of the research process? Idea, experiment, or impact?
The idea part is very funny.
All right.
Yeah, I
Your
mean, the
fa-
others are, but the idea part can be very fun.
okay. Your favorite Portuguese dessert, sweet dish?
Wow. Wow. I'll say it in Portuguese and that I will translate, okay?
Yes.
My favorite one is called leite creme,
Let creme, yes.
okay? There is something similar but is different, which is the crème brûlée in France or the crema catalana in
Yeah.
Catalonia. But the leite creme is different. And the one that my mother used to do is absolutely unique.
Uh, Definitely. If you were not a scientist, you would be, I think you've answered in the talk.
Movie director, yeah.
Movie director. One word to describe membranes.
Well, membranes. What else?
What else?
It's two words.
Two words, all right. And the last question, one word to describe the João Crespo.
Okay, I don't know. I don't know. I try to be honest with myself.
All right. Thank you so much, Professor Jean Crespo. As you can see from my face, it's been an absolute pleasure, absolute honor to witness and to host the webinar podcast series. I'm just having a quick look if anybody um, has raised a question or comment. I can quickly see that your PhD student, Aruch Fatima, she has written, what a wonderful podcast. Congratulations. As Professor Jean mentioned, he loves cinema. So I have a question, Professor. If membrane research were a movie genre, what would it be? Action, drama, scientific fiction, or comedy?
Comedy for sure.
Comedy. All right. Anyhow,
No,
Professor.
but the humor, I mean, humor is something that is fantastic. I really like the possibility to have sense of humor in your daily life. I mean,
Yeah,
it's very important.
definitely. I can see that my colleague Clara from the EMS Council, she has said that scientific fiction should also be one of the
Yes.
answers for memory and research.
Yeah.
All right. Anyhow, Professor Jean, once again, muito obrigado. Thank you so much.
I'm,
As
I'm,
always, it's an absolute pleasure. And if there are any further questions, we shall definitely write to you.
sure.
It's the entire podcast is recorded on the YouTube channel. The viewers can always go back, learn and relearn the concepts and words of wisdom from Professor Jean Crespo's webinar podcast. And we shall continue this webinar podcast series. The next will be advertised very soon on the EMS social media channels. Professor George CK will be interviewing soon Dr. Anita from Belgium. So please stay tuned to the EMS news, and thanks to the EMS Council members for their rock solid support. And thank you once again, Professor Joao. And before I sign out, I'll just read the comment of Clara. She says, thanks, Jean, for your talk. I still remember the first plenary I listened during Network Young Membranes, NYM, in Barcelona, and you are a symbol in membrane research to many of us. I could not agree more. So thank you once again.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thanks a
Professor.
lot, Usman. My regards also to Clara through this channel. But Usman, thank you so much for doing this. I mean, not with me, but with others. I think it's a very interesting initiative, and I'm very glad to see that EMS you took your role in a way to provide others with new things, so which is very important. And
Thank
thank you
you.
so much. I mean, you know that EMS is my house, so I'm very honored for this
As
invitation.
always, I'm humble, Professor.